everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our look at the railways, mainly the Great Central Railway around Kirkby and Ashfield, from over at Annesley and over towards Bentinck Colliery. So down there you can see that's where we were in the very last video, that really deep cutting that's just been lost to time, coming from Annesley North Portal and Kirkby South Junction. What we've got this way next up, we're going to jump straight into the thick of it. We've got the Mansfield Pinxton Railway just down there. That is an active line with maybe 3, 4, 5 workings a day. Got Pinxton that way, Mansfield over there. Now, where the Great Central line came across, obviously from 2 different levels, you've got the Mansfield side and you've got the Great Central main line on that side. There was 2 bridges down there. The lower one around about there, shooting off towards Sheffield, and you've got the Mansfield one slightly higher than the one on the left, because the track bed and the cutting behind us was slightly higher on the right hand side, and that curved off and shot off towards Mansfield. So I'm going to get myself down Portland Part. We're going to cross the Mansfield Pinxton Railway safely at a proper crossing, and I'll talk to you a little bit further down there. So back in Kirkby and Ashfield for part 2 of our explore around this area, part 2 of 3 videos. And in part 1 we had a look at the former Annesley cutting coming away from the northern portal of Annesley tunnel up until the Mansfield Pinxton Railway. And just in a moment after we looked at the maps, we've got a beautiful photo showing the track still down of that very same cutting, and that is thanks to Stephen Sinfield. So very grateful for that image being sent to me for that. Now if we zoom into the area that we're going to look at, you can see the cutting that we looked at last time. Again, the blue line is the Great Central Railway, the red line the Great Northern Railway, and the yellow lines are the Midland Railway. And we're going to focus on this triangle in the centre. It's only a little area that we're going to cover today, and it is going to have a look at a strange little structure. It's like a concrete water cascade which helped the water come down. It aerated the water basically away from the River Erewash as it transferred itself underneath 3 different railway lines, all part of the Great Central Railway. Once beyond that, we'll head on up to the Great Northern Railway's cord that joined on from Kirkby and Ashfield and onto the Great Central line, which is the left-hand side red line that I'm pointing at now. We'll then have a look what sort of relics actually remain, and also the configuration of the current active railway, before finishing off today's journey. Now here's that beautiful little image I mentioned earlier, showing the line looking towards Annesley Tunnel Northern Portal. You can see where the brickwork walling finishes. The photographer has took the picture from the higher section of the track bed. The track bed headed off towards Mansfield, and the track on the right hand side is the former section which heads off towards Sheffield and the north. So stood safely at this foot crossing on the Mansfield Pinxton Railway, you've got to imagine that just around that bend was those 2 bridges that I mentioned. The first one, the lower one, heading off towards Sheffield in the north, and you got the one straight behind it which headed off towards Mansfield and on to Clipston. Now the Clipston one, the Mansfield one, that didn't open until 1917, so it was relatively a bit of a newcomer to the area, and the railways around here were pretty complex. You got the Midland Railway, of course the Great Central Railway, and you'd even got some of the Great Northern Railway getting in on the act as well. I'm going to get myself over here and pick up where the track bed used to shoot across the land, and it's an interesting little concrete structure down there too. And just worthy of a quick mention, now I'm on the other side, there's a gate just here, and that is our former track bed off towards Bentinck Colliery. Closed in 1972 when a rapid loader was installed, and the track and the trains went off towards Pinxton and joined back onto this very same railway line. So down here, that's the River Erewash, and the source of that is just the other side of the Mansfield Pinxton line in Portland Park, where we began this video, and that flows off heading in that direction, eventually ending up in the River Trent. Now if I cross over, and on the other side you'll see there's a tributary going into the Erewash as well. Now a couple of maps, they label this up as the Erewash, but the majority of maps, even today's current maps, suggest that that is the Erewash, and it does have a source in Portland Park where we just came from. But there's something up here which is quite, it's weird. I have an idea of what it is and its purpose, and it'll also take us to where the Great Central Lines crossed over, and also a third track as well. So here, look, we've got this concrete structure, and I believe it used to be a water cascade coming down from some sort of culvert, because if we look down here again, we've got that small little stream, look, flowing down and joining what is the Erewash down there, and it looked like it's been out of action for a very, very long time. So if we clamber up a few steps, I can show you a few things which may have suggested what the purpose was. Right, so there was a third track. It was like a wagon storage head shunt for Bentinck Colliery, and it stopped around about here. It didn't carry on, it stopped and headed off towards Bentinck Colliery, about a quarter of a mile just over there. Now if you look here, there's a lot of collapsed and fallen concrete. Some of it is curved and some of it is flat, and you can see that this is also supported on legs, which I'll get down there in a moment and show you. So I believe just here there was some sort of pipe work or culvert which carried this stream, which is now down there, underneath the two railway lines over there, and possibly even the tip of this head shunt siding for Bentinck Colliery. You can see there's a little bit more of this collapsed concrete and even some stone brickwork in there as well, look. And the way the land is lying, it looks like it has been demolished or collapsed. Look at it coming down on both sides. Something used to be here, and what it was the two railway lines. So once I get up there, I'll show you roughly where I believe they were, and then I can see a little bit of a waterfall up there, which suggests that the water dropped down another level, and then it must have come straight in at this angle into this concrete formation. Look, there's a couple of interesting holes at the bottom, maybe some sort of brackets or further pipe work, and the water then coming underneath all three railway lines and down this cascade. That was probably where the river flowed before the railways were actually constructed. And looking down on the other side, look, you can still see that gap underneath, where it is just supported by some sort of legs, which we'll find out in a little while. So yeah, got the head shunt there, and next up was the main line heading off to Sheffield and the north. Let's go and see if we can find out roughly where that was. Now first of all, I'll have to get out of here, so carefully does it, climb over, and I'll show you what it looks like on the other side. So there's that stonework, look, just there, and you can see where all this used to join on, look, and more collapsed concrete down there and collapsed concrete down there. If I nip round here to the side, I'm not going to go too far down, it looks really slippy, but you can see it's just supported on metal, steel posts, look, just there, holding all that concrete weight up. So up top of our concrete Cascade just down there, look. And if we go over here a little way, there's a lot more concrete collapse. On the right hand side we've got the Mansfield to Pinxton line just there, and roughly around about there would have been the two bridges, one shooting across, heading straight over there towards the north. Just to the left you can see that line of trees just there. That is our Bentinck Colliery siding, which we mentioned that would stop around about there. Immediately after there was the other line, the higher bridge, looked about 4, 5, 6 feet higher than the main line on that side, and that again, it shot over, went all the way over there and headed off towards Mansfield. And there's a line of trees just there, and that was a chord for the Great Northern Railway joining off the line at Kirkby and onto the Great Central line from Mansfield. And all the way along, look, these bits of concrete all collapsed, and the embankments have just given way, as to suggest that there was indeed those culverts under the railway lines and these great big embankments that took both main lines away, and also probably where that concrete cascade was. I can hear water falling now, and at this point we would have gone past the embankments of both Great Central lines. They'd have probably been behind us now. And down here we join back to this small little river, and there's that waterfall I could hear coming, and I mentioned it earlier, I could hear one nearby. So although most maps appear to show the River Erewash starting in Portland Park in Kirkby and Ashfield, and you get the odd map that shows that the river that we've been following today is actually the Erewash as well, it does appear to be that this is in fact the River Erewash, and the source of it is just a little further up as it disappears underneath the Great Northern Railway. So now we're on a fold crossing. It's a little bit open, so there's a bit of wind unfortunately, and you can see our little stream heading off up there, and it goes underground up there and it disappears, and it goes under our Great Northern Chord. Okay, so there's our little stream just down there, and there is the junction that we're going to head up to on part of this Great Northern Railway spur. There's the Mansfield Pinxton line, and just over there is our concrete cascade and the demolished culverts from the Great Central lines, which shot across up there and joined onto this chord. So I'm going to quickly run up top, and we've got a nice short bit of track work to follow. It's just here, look. And you've got to imagine it curved off. This is the Great Northern Chord that joined on to the Great Central line down there, and we've got a bit of a gate to go through, look. And there's a short bit of track bed that we're looking at down there, look. Now it's now known as Bentinck Banks Nature Reserve, and I suppose the bank name comes from the embankment of the railway. Quite high up, I'd say around about 10-12 metres on both sides. So I'm going to walk you up here, and I think there might be a nice little bridge still remaining a little bit further down. So on top of what was probably once a farm access bridge, I can point you down there, look. And there's a path going underneath. You can see the abutments on either side and the stonework. This path will be down on there in a little while, and that will take us back down to where we started this video, at that concrete cascade. We can look down on the other side, spin it upside down a bit, you can just make it out a little bit there. So we'll come back through and we'll have a walk underneath. On my right hand side we've got the Mansfield Pinxton line, and further right than that we've got the Robin Hood line as well. So there's a footbridge up here. In fact, I believe there's 2 footbridges, and we're going to go stand on top of them and I'll show you what the formation is like and what it was also once like. So I'm stood directly above the Mansfield Pinxton Railway. I'm going to show you over there. You see the signal just there and the curve around there. That's where the 2 overbridges were for the Great Central Railway. We was at the beginning, and that foot crossing was also just beyond there. On this side, through there, we've got the Robin Hood line, but that was constructed for the opening of that line between Nottingham and, at the time, just on towards Mansfield. I'll take you over there and give you a little look of what it looks like from that footbridge too. And there we go, that is where both lines join onto each other at the junction. Just out of sight behind there is Kirkby and Ashfield railway station, which also opened at the same time as the line did. Down there is Grives Lane level crossing, where I was at the beginning of the last video, where we was near the portal of the Northern Annesley Tunnel. Let's go back across the Mansfield Pinxton line and we'll see if we can get onto that bridge. And stood back above the Mansfield Pinxton line, you might be able to make out a little green bridge, and that is where Kirkby and Ashfield station is. So this is the bridge that was stood above on that Great Northern Railway spur. It joined onto the Great Central and on to the Midland Railway, where we've just been on those footbridges. It's a beautiful little thing, isn't it? Clearly it was just for farm access. It's got the iron top and the stone walling abutments, and even a couple of, well, just the one large pipe going under there, which I'm not sure if that would actually still be being used today. It's got to be water or gas though, hasn't it? I love the way the stone walling curves just there as well. It curves around, as does this side. I like that a lot. Nice little find. So leaving that behind, Great Northern Spur on the right, and this side is the Mansfield Pinxton Railway. So we're between the pair of them. And we're now going to find where that little stream that headed off towards the culverts and Cascade disappears underground. And here it is. So this is where it emerges and heads off towards where we began this video. I'll pop the camera around the side here. So I've no idea where this comes from. I don't know if it's surface water or joins onto another river somewhere. I don't know. I've tried to look on maps, so if anybody knows. Now this is the one again that a couple of maps says is the Erewash, but majority of the maps said the one in the Portland Park is in fact the Erewash. So I do hope you have enjoyed this video looking at where the Great Central Railway, the Great Northern Railway and even the Midland Railway, it basically took over and had a monopoly on what was previously probably just farmland. I'm going to head back to where the Bentinck Colliery branch is. It was closed in 1972. I've got some lovely, lovely historic footage from 1972 showing when the rapid loader was first in use, and some really nice photographs of Bentinck Colliery as well. So I shall see you in part 3. Should follow straight on after this one. If you've not seen part 1, go and have a look. It's the last video that I did before this. It's worth a look, really nice. Like, subscribe, please comment below. See you in the next one. Bye bye.